Coming out of my first preview with Star Wars Outlaws, I was pretty lukewarm. There was so much stuff we just didn't get answers to or get to see. How does the open world work? What does reputation actually do? Progression, itemization. Well, now that I've played another 4 hours of Star Wars Outlaws, experienced the open world and everything in between, and look, I'm all in. Let me know any questions you have about the game and I'll get back to you in the comments down below. All the footage you're seeing in this video is my own gameplay, so that loser you're seeing who can't aim with a controller, that's me! There is some things we can't show you, like the UI or the menus and some story stuff that we did experience, but the first 3 hours that we played, we were dropped into the open world of Tashara and essentially just given free roam. We could complete main quests, side quests, explore, and just really do what we please with really no restrictions. And then the final hour, we played a main mission on Kijimi a little bit later in the game, and then we're given a little bit of free roam around that like main city afterwards. For clarity here, I'm not going to rehash some of the combat or ship gameplay discussions and criticisms that I had in my initial preview, so if you want more information on that stuff, go back and watch that video. But let's talk about the open world. I was mildly annoyed coming out of the Summer Games Fest preview that Ubisoft is marketing Star Wars Outlaws as the first open world Star Wars game, and I spent an hour with the game playing a linear corridor missions with no open world. Like, what is the open world? Is it just another Ubisoft world? Well, yes, but also no. Let me explain. Massive Entertainment, with both Avatar and the Division games behind them, are probably the best at Ubisoft at developing an interesting and unique open world, in my opinion. And what's different about Star Wars Outlaws is a few things, namely the intel system and how the reputation impacts your open world exploration. So when you hear the term Ubisoft open world and the general criticism around that, it's used to describe an open world that's filled with icons and nonsense to run around and collect, like 10 camps to clear and 5 collectibles over here. And Outlaws has a very different way of handling these open world objectives. Most side missions and really any points of interest are given to Kay via intel. Now this intel can be found by leaning against a bar or listening to people around you, talking to NPCs, reading data pads, or even buying intel from vendors. This starts an intel chain, and as an example, I was wandering around the market in Tashara and found a black market vendor. He would not sell me anything, so this started an intel chain, and I began sleuthing around the market and ended up leaning against a bar and overhearing a conversation about the password needed to access that vendor.
Tell him you're a friend of Arlo.
But I don't know Arlo.
No, that's the password.
Then who's Arlo?
No one. Just forget it.
So I went back and gave him the password, and this unlocked the vendor who had some unique items and some rare upgrade parts as well, and it completed that intel chain. He also sold me another intel piece of information about a piece of rare gear that was in a Crimson Dawn base out in one of their territories in the open world. So once I was out in the open world, I went and scoped it out looking for that item. Now these areas aren't just camps either. Each faction controls a large portion of the open world map, like a region basically, where you'll see patrols both on speeder bikes or on foot and outposts and the likes, essentially like the faction, like running their, criminal enterprise from those areas. Now, because I had a good reputation with the Crimson Dawn at that time, I was able to enter their territory freely, search for the item. I ended up stealing a bunch of stuff and getting caught, and I lost all of my good Crimson Dawn reputation. So they were very mad at me, and it actually affected another mission I did later on. More on that later, but I really enjoyed this little system, right? It's not just as simple as giving you an objective to go and fill out or some sort of collectibles. I felt like I was discovering this on my own, right? Like I found this intel chain. It's like, oh, where could this be? And it's in this area. It didn't tell me exactly where I needed to go. I still had to try and find where this item was, or even just going there and choosing to do that. These intel chains are also side quests, like as simple as helping a droid have an issue or finding an NPC that gives Kay the ability upgrades. So I used the intel system to find both the slicer, so you can slice things and get into areas that I couldn't before, and the speeder bike upgrade that unlocked the boost feature so that I could like boost on my speeder bike, which I really wish I had when I first did the speeder race, which you can actually do on your bikes. There are races you can do. Now, these longer intel chains led to like legitimate side quests and like actual content and missions to go complete. Compared to the missions that I did at Summer Games Fest, I really enjoyed these.
You're having a bad day.
So the missions I did at Summer Games Fest, one of them was actually here. That was the Kajimi mission that we did here, but it was a bit longer and that typical like main quest style of mission, you know, you'd expect from literally every video game that's like this, right? There's a MacGuffin that you've got to go and get, and how you get it, well, you know, you could sneak into the base using your sneaky skills. And in this case, Nyx's abilities like distracting enemies, sabotaging their equipment, steal what you need, or you could go in guns blazing and just like kill them all and like lean into the combat system in that way. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, literally at all. All games have these traditional styled missions that allow you to interact with the game's core gameplay loops. Like, think of it like you're ordering a large burger combo. This is like the burger part, right? It's the main course. The fries and the drink are on the side. That's your side missions and your other activities. In Star Wars Outlaws case, that's the reputation system and the absolutely ton of mini games that you'll find. But what I appreciated about the side missions I did during my preview were how varied each single one was. So continuing the speeder bike thread from earlier, that mission that the intel chain led to was an entirely park or based mission where I was moving through a wind farm, trying to avoid grabbing onto a crate when like the wind was coming so it didn't like push me off, or, you know, avoiding the turbines when they kicked in. There are other times where you complete simple side missions or contracts that can play out differently depending on your reputation. At one point, when I had a good standing with the Crimson Dawn and needed to steal a blaster part from either the Pikes or the Crimson Dawn, I chose the Crimson Dawn because I had a good reputation with them, so I could essentially just walk into their base and steal it. Now, the downside to that is if I got caught, I'd be at risk of losing my reputation, so it might be safer to sneak into the Pikes base because they already hated me at that time, but I stole the part and everything was fine, like they didn't catch me or anything. However, remember when I said I got caught in the open world stealing from the Crimson Dawn base and they were pissed? Well, later on in the session, I needed to confront a contact that was hiding in the Crimson Dawn district back at the city, and this time they would not let me in. So I had to find a way to sneak in and sneak around behind the guards, take a couple out, and find a way to get to the contact to learn the information I needed about the slicer. Now, this is simply all based off that reputation system and how it can impact how you choose to complete certain objectives, and it puts that agency in your hands, and I loved this stuff.
Hey, I put out some feelers while you were doing this job and found you another potential buyer.
Are you saying I should pull a double cross?
It could be profitable.
So the entire system is what I'm really excited about for Star Wars Outlaws. This whole reputation stuff that now I finally know exactly how it works and everything about it, which I'll have another video breaking down this entire system and everything you need to know from the factions, their rewards, and all the different reputation levels, etc. So make sure you subscribe and like this video and do all that good stuff. You know how it goes for YouTube. But at a high level, the reputation system affects almost everything in the game. Now, there are 4 factions: the Pike Syndicate, the Crimson Dawn, the Hutt Cartel, and the Ashiga Clan. Each faction has a different reputation with Kay and Nyx that is constantly in flux based on your actions. There are levels to these reputations as well, from terrible, bad, poor, good, and excellent. Now, each of these levels of the faction will affect different things, but at a high level, if you have like a negative reputation, members of that faction will shoot you on sight and you won't be allowed into like their areas. If you have a positive reputation, you will be allowed in those areas. It will also affect the amount of opportunities that that faction will give you in terms of, say, giving you access to certain contracts and how much they'll award you for completing those contracts, as well as certain merchants will either give you like ridiculous prices in either the positive or the negative for anything you want to buy from them, depending on your reputation, or access to exclusive stock. There are additional benefits here for both positive and negative if you max out the reputations, including access to exclusive gear and potentially being able to just like steal anything with no consequences if you have an excellent standing, or having a kill squad sent after you regularly if you have a terrible reputation. What really excites me about Star Wars Outlaws is how this system is going to impact my decision making when playing the game. Like I already touched on earlier about needing that blaster part and why I chose to go the Crimson Dawn route rather than the Pike Syndicate, and how that can also impact replayability if you're choosing to play this game again and, you know, siding with certain factions or making certain decisions. We've never really seen a dynamic system like this in an Ubisoft game before that affects so much of the game's overall world state. If there was a studio that I wanted to do something like this, it would absolutely be massive entertainment because of their history with the Division. So I personally have a lot of faith that they're going to pull this off, and from what I have seen of this system and how it seems to interact and affect not only the open world but the way you can complete missions, I really did like, and I think it's one of the core features of Star Wars Outlaws that I think is really going to add to that enjoyment for people. I always think about those like water cooler conversations, even though I've literally never stood at a water cooler in my entire life, but those conversations you have with people over a water cooler about certain games and discussing how you completed a mission and then that mission being different for someone else. We had some of those conversations coming out of this preview as we were just standing around talking about what we did, how we chose to do it, whether we snuck into a base or whether we were allowed in, or, you know, what faction we sided with, and all that sort of intricate details that really add to a game's depth and its overall replayability, as well as how you experience the gameplay.
How do you know my name?
I keep an eye out for new talent. Name's Varric, and I've got a real job for you.
I hope a real job means real credits.
It does for the Hutts.
Coming out of Summer Games Fest after playing Outlaws for an hour, I was leaning positive about the game, but I hadn't really seen enough to be like excited about Star Wars Outlaws. If anything, I was maybe a little bit more cautious about the game as a whole, considering I wasn't sure if the combat loop was strong enough to hold an entire game, or if there was enough engaging content around the linear missions that I experienced at Summer Games Fest. After another 4 hours with the game, I'm really excited to play more when the game finally launches on August 30th. I haven't even talked about the combat, the ship exploration, or the ship combat at all in this video, but I am really excited for that open world Star Wars feel of a game with a deep looking reputation system and a dense but different open world. And I'll have a full review coming at launch to see if all these systems in the gameplay loop are as good as they felt in this short 4-hour preview. So I'll see you all then, but let me know any questions you have about the game in your comments down below. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.